Everything's been perverted, so you can't do your rituals. You can't do your growing. You cannot do the things you once did because you don't understand how things are. That's why every building was a line for winter and summer solstice. Okay, now let's get into this. Fair use.
I start thinking about this idea of the South and the North, and why do we always make the North the dominant thing? And then I saw a map that Idrisi, the first map maker of the world, was Idrisi. He was a Moroccan who did a world map, and he put the South on the top, and he put the North on the bottom. The European map makers actually took from his book, but they realized the significance of putting the South on the top. It put Africa over Europe. And so they actually flipped it over and made their maps with the North on the top. And interestingly enough, if you read in the book called The Venture of Islam, Hodgson's points this out, how he said it's so unfortunate that the Muslims don't recognize that they made the first maps and they put the South on the bottom, and they should go back to putting the South on the bottom because it's a completely Eurocentric worldview that actually does not have historical foundation. And so we should make maps that have Africa, right, on the top, and then Europe on the bottom, and we say, I'm going down to Europe and up to Africa, right? So we have to say, I'm going up to Los Angeles and down to San Francisco, because in Arabic you actually do say the South is up. In fact, they call southern Egypt Sa'id, which is upper Egypt. And northern Egypt is lower Egypt. Go down to Egypt, right? And also in Libya they say it as well. They say Nas'ad al-Qibla, we're going up south, Wanzil al-Bahr, we're going down to the ocean, which is in the north. So this is traditional cosmology, and don't think this is insignificant, the impact that seeing maps all your life with Africa on the bottom. Yeah. And then the other thing about a southern map, nothing's over Arabia. That's another thing about it. Look at a southern map, because I have one that was printed in Australia, because the Australians caught on to this. And they said, why should we be down under? And so they just turned it right side up, right? And they made their maps. I have a map from New Zealand, and it's really interesting to look at it. It actually puts things in a very interesting perspective. You start seeing things like how close Ireland is to Morocco, for instance, and how close Germany is to England. You realize how strong the Germanic ties, because you don't get that sense when you see a northerly dominant map. So it's very interesting.
Well, another map that questions our assumptions about North was actually a map that I enjoy telling school teachers about especially. This was a map that was first drawn by a 12-year-old boy from Australia. His name was Stuart MacArthur. Stuart drew an early version of this map when he was in 6th grade and passed it into his teacher, and the teacher said, Stuart, we do this right, or you're not going to pass. And he didn't understand why it was that he couldn't have Australia on the top of a map. Well, a few years later, he was 15 years old, and he was an exchange student in Japan. And when he got to Japan, he was ridiculed mercilessly by his fellow exchange students from the USA. They taunted him for coming from the bottom of the earth. And at that time, when he was 15, he resolved that one day he was going to publish a map of the world with Australia on top. So fast forward 6 years, he's 21, he's graduating from the University of Melbourne. This is Australia Day in 1979. He published this map that you're looking at, and since that time, it's sold 350,000 copies. Not bad for a kid who was told to do things a different way. An abbreviated version of the caption on that says as follows: at last, the first move has been made. The first step in the long overdue crusade to elevate our glorious but neglected nation from the gloomy depths of anonymity in the world power struggle to its rightful position, towering over its northern neighbors, reigning splendidly at the helm of the universe. No longer will the South wallow in a pit of insignificance, carrying the North on its shoulders for little or no recognition for her efforts. Finally, South emerges on top. South is superior, South dominates, long live Australia, ruler of the universe.
Alright, yep, Palestine. Okay, going back down. Now, important things here. Way down here in the south of Africa, you have this guy. Alright? Does he look like a African, and you have all these castles. What are all these great, looks like kingdoms, European kingdoms, down here, all throughout Africa, alright? What is this all about? What's going on? Anyway, this is the only thing that's right side up. Then when you look at the rest, it's all upside down. Okay? You can see, once again, pretty good map. Again, this is from Angelino Dulcert. From, I think it's around 1330 on this one. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to flip to the next one. Well, I couldn't leave out this one. We have a pretty nice map here. Let me see if I can get it so everyone can see. I'm flipping over here. This is the Sali map from 1100 to 1110 AD. Yes, let's see if I can show you a better view. Okay, it has angels at the top and at the bottom. Here you have Ethiopia, or Africa. Now let me get a different view here. Okay, this one is with a little bit of a better overlay. So it's been redrawn, so that you can get a good idea. Yes, again, from 1100 AD. Very important here. What are all these castles doing in Africa? All these kingdoms. What's that big white king doing down there at the very bottom? All of these, and what's going to get interesting is in the next one. You see these guys here? These monsters, or these non-human creatures here that they supposedly had. There must have been some sort of war, but this is all definitely Africa. You have all these African animals, and then you have these guys. What's this guy? His face and part of his body here. All right, quite interesting, huh? Now I'm going to get into the next slide that I think is really the most interesting one. Okay, now this is the crowning item, although it's not going to be the last one. This is the largest medieval map in the world, and it has some very important things to show you. Okay, it's called the Psalter map. It's from around 1200 AD, and Jerusalem is at the center. Give me just enough. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a bit. You can see Jerusalem. Now again.
Okay, so he's saying Jerusalem is at the center. So Jerusalem is the navel of the world. Alright? Peru and the navel of the world. What I'm trying to tell you is that Peru is the navel of the world. And Peru is Jerusalem. Maccabees happen in South America. Antioch is in South America. They came there and laid siege to our kingdoms. The evidence is everywhere. You can find sunken artifacts, land artifacts. The causeway built from Central America to South America was built by them. Peru is the navel of the world. Like the map just showed you, Jerusalem is in the navel of the world. Alright. I always tended to think Peru as one of the smaller countries in Latin America, and in relation to the really big ones like Brazil and Argentina. It is, however, bigger than France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and Holland combined. In other words, very big indeed. In fact, I discovered that Peru is actually the third largest country on the continent, which just shows you how much I know. It's a country of contrast, divided into 3 regions: the coast, the highlands, and the jungle, just like Hawaii. Most people are aware of some of the more famous tourist sites like Machu Picchu, City of David, Cusco, the Abraham city, Sobek, or Sucos, the Peruvian site of Lake Titicaca. But there are lots more that you probably haven't heard of. A good starting point, as always, are the Lonely Planet and rough guides, but I'm suggesting you start with the Peruvian Tourist Board's own website. The history of Peru is, of course, bound up by the Incas and the Spanish conquistadors. You can see this in Cusco, known to the Incas as the navel of the world. Look, they're trying to mess me up already. It's a navel of the world. They're